All right, it is Monday, June 16th, 2025 at 1:30, and this is the Health, Housing, Homelessness, and Human Services Committee with Supervisor Luis Alejo and myself, Wendy Rudascu. We are calling our committee meeting to order. We are active on Zoom as well as from the Monterey room of the Government Center in Salinas, as well as from the District 4 Supervisor's Office in Marina. So we'll do item number 3, receive a presentation assessing the extent to which Monterey County ordinances and policies align with Governor Newsom's model ordinance for addressing encampments and provide direction as necessary. It's still you, Roxanne.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Roxanne Wilson and I serve as the county's Homeless Services Director. Today I'll be presenting, as mentioned, an overview on how Governor Newsom's model ordinance on addressing encampments aligns with the county's current ordinances and policies. You'll note that the state also has a body called CalICH that makes recommendations on policies, and the governor had directed CalICH to further release another guidance on addressing encampments, so you will see throughout my presentations reference to the CalICH guidance as well. And of course, this is a timely and important conversation because I think all jurisdictions across the state of California face pressure to respond to unsheltered homelessness while balancing the legal mandates and providing humane care. So just a little bit of background. In the recent months, again, Governor Newsom's administration released a model ordinance intended to create guidance for local jurisdictions, but this started much earlier than that. Back in June of it says 2024. What year are we? Oh, it was 2024. Sorry, I had a moment. The U.S. Supreme Court had ruled 6-3 that when and basically I cannot speak, a case that overturned Martin versus Boise, excuse me. And in July 2024, Governor Newsom ordered state agencies to clear homeless encampments on state land and encourage local jurisdictions to adopt encampment policies that align with the Caltrans policies, and that was through Executive Order N-124. Then in January 2025, Monterey County Board of Supervisors approved my office's encampment resolution policy, and during that time I had also disclosed that there is likelihood that the state was going to start tying a encampment resolution policy to our ability to receive homeless funding, in which we did see in the HAP6 application. And then again in May 2025, Governor Newsom had released the model ordinance for cities and counties. So one of the core differences between all of the different documents that my office has reviewed is in the model ordinance. It does have many banning elements in which our county our county ordinance does not include. For example, it does state that in the governor's ordinance that there's bans on camping, sleeping, and the use of structures in certain public spaces, specifically near sensitive areas like schools, parks, and critical infrastructure. The county's ordinance is a little bit more broad than that. It does define that, we're talking about erecting tents or shelter for the purpose of sleeping, arranging bedding for the purpose of sleeping, or use of standing or parked vehicle for the purposes of sleeping. And then it further talks about no camping is allowed in any public space unless it's otherwise posted. And then we have the encampment resolution policy where we do talk about 500 feet from a preschool, daycare center, elementary school, or high school. So there is some alignment between all three, well, the 2 ordinances and the county policy, but again, it's not very clear when it comes down to sleeping. And then when it comes down to the service connections, I think that this is where our policy really does stand out. The model ordinance does talk about how every jurisdiction should make reasonable efforts to identify shelter or emergency shelter, navigation centers, or appropriate housing for people who are being displaced from encampments. CalICH also says that local jurisdiction should offer shelter before taking action on removing an encampment. And then there's no reference to that in the county's ordinance. However, in the encampment response or resolution policy, we do talk about how we should work with internal and external partners to ensure a range of supportive services are available to individuals who are voluntarily or involuntarily displaced from encampments. And since the Board of Supervisors had approved the policy, my office has been working closely with different departments and with the continuum of care for us to get all of the engines going and ensure that we have all of the resources readily available when we have knowledge that an encampment cleanup is going to happen. And further, the model ordinance says that local jurisdiction should give a minimum of 48 hours before the action is taken. And Cal ICH's guidance does align with that 48 hours. The county's ordinance does not have any reference to that. However, the encampment policy gives an extra day. So we do 72 hours, not including weekends or holidays. And that was actually at the request of one of our constituents who had come to our first reading of the policy in this body. And the reason why we added that extra day and took away the weekends and holidays is because we also know that people need to have time to access those resources, and many programs are not open on the weekends or holidays. Another area that the county really does stand out, the model ordinance says that local jurisdictions should store belongings that are either left behind or that are left behind from individuals being displaced from encampments that have an apparent value of $50 or more, or has an apparent personal value. So we're talking about photographs, urns, things of that sort, for no less than 60 days. The county ordinance does not have any reference, but again, the county encampment resolution policy adds an extra 30 days to that storage and has very similar language to the model ordinance as far as how we value property. And I must state that even though it's 30 days more than the state's recommendation, it is in alignment with the city of Salinas's. So we do have some consistency. As we all know, there is nuance when it comes to invisible lines. And here's just a very long comparison of items that the county will not store versus the model ordinance. In general, it's pretty much in alignment. We're not looking at toxic sharps, chemicals. Actually, so much of this seems to be very much in alignment. It's almost as if they had our policy or something when they wrote this. So the final assessment is essentially the existing county ordinance combined with the adopted encampment resolution policy generally meet all of the components of the governor's model ordinance except for certain banning elements, particularly around structures and sleeping in public. The county offers a more human-centered approach through an additional 24 hours of notice that does not include weekends and holidays. We do have an additional 30 days of storage, and we also have different levels of interventions. So
obviously we went through our process to adopt our policy that Roxanne presented, and that was before the governor released his model ordinance, which it was just good to be able to do the comparison. So thank you, Roxanne, for that analysis. But I think as Roxanne said, we were ahead of we're ahead of the game, ahead of the governor, and I think unless we see some issues, I don't think we don't need to adjust our ordinances since they're mostly aligned.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think ours is really solid, and I appreciate all the work that we did to get an ordinance put together, not knowing if we were going to get one from the state or not. I think so. This is great. I feel really good about where we're at. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wendy, Tim Heaven, lead chair, Swc Leadership Council member, Swc California State Policy Advisory board member. I just want to put out there, like every time I see these, camping ban rules, it's just like we're gonna. It's so dangerous to just say that we're gonna offer services, knowing damn well that we have no housing for these people. We don't have any shelter space that's available, zero. And whenever I've done outreach the last 4 or 5 years, and I've not been, there's never a space for like one person available, let alone hundreds. And I really, really hope that we can start humanizing people more and really looking for ways that we can create safe spaces where people can be, because it does so much damage to people, their well-being, their mental health, when we sweep them around like they're trash. You know, instead of like these ordinances, they don't do anything to identify where people are going to go. They're going to either end up in jail or just chased around town to the different jurisdictions. It's insanity to keep doing the same thing, wasting taxpayer dollars, and not really coming up with any real solutions. You know, like the most immediate solution is creating a safe space for people to be at and identifying that. And so I'm going to keep coming to these meetings and mentioning it until hopefully something gets done. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for all of your guidance and support on the getting the initial ordinance drafted.
I thank you once again. I don't know how my name came up on the screen because I chose to be anonymous, so I don't appreciate that. But with that said, my question is to the lady that was speaking, Hilda, I believe is her name. Why do we have 3 motels that were designed to house or help house the homeless people that are now all boarded up, fences all around them? That's our taxpayer dollars. Why were those 3 motels shut down when that was intended to alleviate part of the problem of them residing in Chinatown and other areas such as Creek Bridge, etc.? The other thing is, you know, the homeless, I have compassion for the homeless because we do know that in Monterey County, you cannot work at a McDonald's and afford a studio apartment. There really needs to be something done with, you know, having fair rent. So I know that that's an issue that's on the you know, that we're filing petitions to stop that. But, you know, with the homeless, part of the issue is I think people would be more willing to help if they weren't so flagrant. Many of the homeless are either addicted to drugs or they have mental health issues. You know, all the litter that we see everywhere on the streets. I mean, this has got to be a community process, the homeless and us trying to help each other. The homeless people need to have a little more respect for the fact, yeah, you may be homeless, but that doesn't give you the right to just be a pig and throw your trash everywhere. It's a safety risk, and as far as the health department, you know, look at all the sweeps we're doing. We're spending thousands of dollars to do sweeps, and the problem still continues. You guys don't even know how to manage money.
Okay, I just wanted to say I agree with Tim with the with helping the homeless. All the county's doing is taking them from one spot and putting them in another spot, and it's not working out when they don't have housing. So I totally agree with that. And I have my own outreach program that helps the homeless, and that's what I've been hearing is that the cops, all they do is harass them and harass them and harass them and take their stuff and put them in jail, and they get lost in the system, and then they get out of jail and they have nothing. That's all I have to say. The system does not work.
Well, I just wanted to say that you guys are doing a disservice to the middle class by wasting so much taxpayer money on trying to fix this homelessness problem that we have. I have to disagree with what Tim said. Part of what he said is not true. We have shelters, we have space available, we have the help. some of these individuals just don't want the help. They want an easy life. They don't want to struggle. And by us giving them crutches and saying, oh, pity party, we're going to try to help you. We've been having this problem for years. Your guys' help isn't really helping people. It's just wasting taxpayer money. You guys should be ashamed of what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Supervisor Askew. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Tim said, and a section of any city, just like allowing people to be, to live, to rest in a dignified and humane way isn't too much to ask. And there are other cities, I think it's San Jose or Sacramento, that have already tried that out, where their spaces are clean and well kept. But I don't believe that sweeps are the way. And I do hope that as the COCs come together, that they're able to provide those services before the 72 hours, and the whole, that just doesn't become a cycle of going into prison or into jail, coming out, not having stuff, and it doesn't need to be that way. And I just wanted to remind everyone that 13,500 of our students in Monterey County are homeless out of 75,000 or 175,000. So I just wanted to give that perspective as a formerly homeless mother with two small children at the time. And that was during COVID. I mean, it can get tough, and I just there's not enough services out there to service everyone. So if we could potentially go the other way and just have a dignified and sanctified space for homeless, then that might be an alternative. Thank you.
Homelessness and addiction are two separate issues. A lot of times people become addicted when they're out there on the streets with nowhere else to go, nothing to do, in despair. For one to say that just because you're homeless, homelessness is not the addiction and homelessness are not the same thing. It's two different issues. To criminalize someone for being homeless is absolutely ridiculous. I agree with what Tim was saying. I think the community needs to really pay more attention to a solution to the problem. And I work for a program where we house over 100 people, and they do great once given the opportunity to, get on their feet and not have to worry about where they're going to rest their heads, where their children are going to sleep.
Wes White, Salinas, Monterey County Homeless Union. A friend of mine actually lost his mother's ashes like a couple weeks ago, and this was kind of a tussle between CHP and Salinas PD, because they were along South Main 101. The Caltrans operators told them to move over away from the fence. Not even 20 minutes later, the city come, say, why don't you take off? And then they lost all their possessions. So your partnerships, we have a leadership council, and it's good that Monterey County is looking out to make sure they get their funding squared away. But as other people have mentioned, how much money is being spent on sweeps? How much money is being mismanaged doing all that? And then we find out, well, obviously we can't do anything to help that. Salinas is going to close down the navigation center, so no more funding for that. You're losing half of your funding for Share Center likely. We're looking at more people on the street. And what's Salinas going to do? They're going to try to push as many people out onto your property so it becomes your problem, not theirs. So maybe what you need to do is start going after your jurisdiction a little more than the public. What was a really good solution was Roberts Lake to Colonel Durham. That was a great, cheap, people provided their own housing, about 40 people in RVs, and we even had a shower. We were getting access to laundry. So, all this is cheap. Do a livability license or a minimal standard on a policy to pass people over. What does it take? If it's just tent and ground or vehicle and ground, it's not a blanket of trash, there's not litter everywhere, which of course when people do sweeps, they leave the litter behind. They take everything of value, but not the litter, because now when the next person comes, you did that. Lies. We don't clean up, we steal. We're robbing people as a policy. And what you're doing, H is the new N word. And that needs to stop, you know, because everything we do, scapegoating. You point a finger, you got 3 pointing right back at you, so you better be triple sure about what you're talking about yourself. Because this is all
Thank you for
scapegoating.
your comments, Wes. We're out of time.
Stop the sweeps.
Thank you for joining us today. It sounds like, Roxanne, you didn't need any direction unless we wanted to change our current ordinance. There's no need, given that our ordinance exceeds what's required in the state ordinance in terms of providing for the needs of humane response to what the state would require us to do. So without that need to make changes, it sounds like Supervisor Alejo and myself are comfortable giving direction to keep our ordinance as is. And thank you again for the presentation and the comparison between the two. Luis, any other comments or questions?
None.
Given the public comment we heard?
None.
None. Okay, great. So with that, we'll receive this report and we can move on.